China on the rise. Is China the biggest threat to America today? General Boykin is going to be on with us to talk about this issue amongst other foreign and national threats to the U.S. Plus, what is going on with the woke U.S. military? All this and more with General Boykin coming up right now.
Joining us right now is Executive Vice President of the Family Research Council, Jerry Boykin, Lieutenant General William Boykin, who has been serving with the Family Research Council now for at least a decade, but he was one of the original members of the U.S. Army's Delta Force. He was also privileged to lead the Army Green Beret and Special Warfare School. He was also the Deputy Director of Defense for Intelligence as well, and we're very grateful for his time. Good morning to you, General. Thank you for being on our show.
It is my pleasure, I assure you.
Praise be to God. We are excited to talk to you, one, because you're a great man of faith, but also because of your incredible background in serving our country in combat, in the Army, of course. But we're living in interesting times, for sure, not only as Christians, but as American citizens. And I wanted to get your take on several of the big issues of our day. And I want to start with what you think might be the greatest threat to the United States today.
Well, I think the greatest threat is probably internal, and the internal threat that I see is the Marxist movement in America, which is changing our culture, changing the direction of our nation, and really robbing us, robbing a generation of the true history of America. Externally, I think China is the largest threat.
Now, if that's saying big things from a man who spent almost 40 years serving our country in the military. You've served under a variety of different presidents, administrations, even I'm sure the general staff above you were interesting in many ways over the years. You're saying now you're seeing a rise in the Marxist. Is this, I guess what I want to understand is, in all of those years and decades you've served, do you see a dramatic increase in our current time, or did you see the water starting to boil over along the way?
No, it was the latter there. In 1958, the Communist Party USA wrote a book called The Naked Communist. And in that book, they told us how they would take over America. And, we scoffed at them. We laughed at them. I was only 10 years old at the time, so I didn't even know what was going on. But in reading that book now and looking at it, I looked at it several years ago, and I saw that the seeds had been sown for a Marxist takeover of America. And if you go back and read the book, The Naked Communist, by a guy named Skousen, and when you read that book, you will say they have done what they set out to do and what they told us they were going to do. But they've done it incrementally. And now, as far as they are concerned, they're in the final stages of this takeover. When they create enough chaos in this country, when they make us, force us to go from being a nation of laws to total anarchy, which is where we're headed. The next step is that they will take over this country. And I believe that we watched it. We've tolerated changes that we didn't recognize were really part of this bigger Marxist plan to take over this nation. And I think my generation, quite frankly, has slept through the last 40 years. And we've allowed them to, for example, to absolutely indoctrinate our children in schools. They've eliminated history, and they've brought in all sorts of things that were all about indoctrination of the generation that would take them to the final phase of their agenda.
General Boykin is our guest. He is the Executive Vice President of the Family Research Council. The website is frc.org, by the way. Let's go back to China. You said a minute ago you thought the greatest external threat to America was China, something we've talked quite a bit about on our radio program. What is it about China's current policies and or positioning that you think is the most threatening to us?
To begin with, we need to understand that China has an agenda to dominate the entire world, the world as we know it. That's been their objective for a long time. And quite frankly, they have what it takes to do that. Now, the question is, can we stop them, or are we willing to stop them? And China has attacked us in every single way. China has developed technology that is, in many cases, superior to ours. China is militarizing sea lanes to ultimately control our foreign trade. And China is developing oil resources in countries all over the world, in Africa, in the Middle East, in Asia, and other places. And China has focused heavily on not only the South China Sea and building on reefs out there, building mobile platforms out there from which they can launch attacks, from which they can launch their boats as well as their airplanes and their drones. And then finally, China has mastered outer space as well as cyberspace. So China has had for some time a capability to knock down our satellites. And if they were to do that, we would be in pretty sad shape when it comes to warfighting, because we are dependent upon those satellites.
So, God forbid, if we should have to go to war, physical combat, cyber combat's been a thing for a while now, but physical combat, what do you think our chances are?
Yeah. Today, look, I don't even know. It's if we actually had to go into a shooting war with China, it's going to be a bloody mess. One of the reasons is that certainly on the ground, China has, in terms of numbers, is far superior to any other army in the world. China just has lots of people. I think it's 1.5 billion people. Now, that said, the United States still has some superior technology. I think that what we need to be watching is China making a move for Taiwan, and that would bring about what you just asked. If they go after Taiwan, theoretically, that would bring about a shooting conflict between the United States and China. And it would do that simply because we have alliances in that part of the world with Japan and South Korea and with Taiwan. We don't have an embassy there, but there is a contingency plan that rests at the Pacific Command headquarters, and that contingency plan is to defend Taiwan. So that would theoretically bring us into a shooting war with China. And it would be ugly. It would be bad. I think on balance that at this right now, today, we still have the advantage against China because of our experiences as much as anything else, because of our naval power. And China has an aircraft carrier now, but as I've talked to some of my naval friends, they say it's going to take them a long time to learn how to really use that. And if you look at air operations on a carrier, that's the most complex thing I've ever seen in the military. So while China has that, I think we still have superiority from a naval perspective. But it would be an ugly mess, an ugly situation if we had to go into a fighting war with them.
Well, having said that, then why? I mean, the previous administration took a tough policy on China, and I like that. This current administration seems to be very soft. Why would they do that, given the threats that you just outlined, given the difficulties, the complexities, and the potential great risks we have as a country, let alone, how about the human rights violations that the world is witnessing going on in China right now? Why would this current administration not be tougher on China?
You know, that I think that there is, with these progressives, as they call themselves, I call them Marxists, but they call themselves progressives. I think they still have this attitude that if we'll be nice to them, they'll love us. They'll reciprocate by being nice to us. And that is just not the way things work in the real world, but it is. I mean, take a look at it. Going back to Jimmy Carter, every time you've had a progressive there, there has been this attitude that we can be nice to people and they'll reciprocate and be nice to us. The reality is we've got to be tough with people. We've got to show a resolve with people. And I think this administration may be compromised. I mean, I think there is evidence coming out right now in terms of Hunter Biden and his dealings with the Chinese and just how deep into that was the president himself. I think all of those things are things that are certainly there is some reason to believe that what's coming out now has some validity. So I think that all of that needs to be reviewed, needs to be investigated, and there needs to be some kind of accountability here. But I think that's one of the reasons that they're not taking a really hard position with China.
You have mentioned that the problem really is you call them you said the progressives, that they call themselves progressives, but you call them Marxist. It kind of makes me think, and I'm young, I'm 23 years old, so I was not aware of all this situation happening before with communism, and now it's striking me as it seems like we're in a pseudo Cold War with China, and it's more of a battle of ideologies today. They maybe not China specifically, but the Marxist ideologies are infiltrating our schools, our churches, our everything, and it seems that's really the real issue there. And we're not going to be conquered from outside in; we're going to be conquered from the inside out. What say you?
I say you're absolutely right. In fact, I think that Khrushchev told us that a long time ago. Told us that back in the 60s. We'll destroy you. We'll bury you. I think what he said. And they went on to say, we'll take over America without firing a shot. And that's exactly what they're trying to do right now. They're trying to take over this country through this Marxist movement, and they've been at it for, certainly since the 40s, trying to take over this country. But I think probably the landmark thing was when they wrote a book and told us how they were going to do it, and we didn't believe them, and we watched them do it incrementally, thinking, well, this is not going to hurt. Well, that's not a big thing. Well, everything that we compromised on, every time we compromised, and they succeeded in doing what they were trying to do, they put them one step closer to achieving their agenda. Now, let me tell you, one of the things that they said they were going to do is they were going to attack the American families. They were going to go after the families. They were going to go after them and try to make the family disintegrate. And that is because in any nation, especially in America, if you want a good high school graduation rate, you want low crime rates, you want good personal health, what you need most is an intact family structure, mom, dad, and children. And if you can attack that and you can destroy that by having the dads taken off and having absentee fathers with no man in the house. And that's what they said they were going to do. So a lot of what you see in these absentee fathers really goes back to their efforts to destroy the American family. It's working too.
Which leads me to another thought about some of the big issues of our day. Critical race theory being, taught in schools all over our countries, let alone higher institutions or just plain old corporate America embracing critical race theory. And yet we see, with all the talk of racism, a disproportionate figure of fatherless homes within minority communities, especially among Black Americans. I think as much as 70%. In fact, it's a very tragic number. And it seems like the Marxists, the progressives, as you say, they don't actually want to solve these problems. They want to perpetuate them. At least that's the way it looks from the outside in. What say you, General Boykin?
Yeah, no, that's true. That's absolutely true. It's 72% in the Black families. In fact, the ethnic group with the strongest family bonds, intact families, is actually the Asians. If you go and look at the statistics, it's the Asians that have the most intact families per capita. And but look, you get the father out of the house, and what you wind up with is a a lot more criminal activities because there's nobody supervising those young boys, especially. And you get that father out of the house, get him distracted, even if he's in the home, and you get him distracted with pornography or gambling or all of those things. He's not going to provide the kind of leadership that he should be providing in that home. And we're seeing it all over the country. Here at the Family Research Council, we're going around and doing men's conferences just to be able to talk to men about what you and I are talking about today, and what these men have to do to get back and provide the leadership in those homes that they're supposed to provide. Because look, the moms are stepping up, and I think most people know that in the what they call the hood in these big cities, grandmothers, big mama as they're called, grandmothers, they rock. They are the ones that are raising the children, both boys and girls, and God bless them for doing that. But we need men in there to where they can have a role model. They can have somebody to discipline them, supervise them, and hold them accountable. And that's what is not happening in so many communities all over this country. And that was because they were targeted by the Communist Party USA in this Marxist movement. Target the men, get them out of the home.
You know, that's very interesting, especially what you were saying about pornography and the like, because we often associate, people like to say, you know, this is an Orwellian society, but people forget George Orwell was a socialist himself, and we're more akin to the Aldous Huxley world, where we are trying to shove sensual pleasures on people. We dispose of the idea of suffering. We say that there's no such thing as redemptive suffering, and we know that there is, because of our Lord Jesus Christ, who died for us, and we know that we can imitate that suffering and make it redemptive. Yet the society does the exact opposite, and that destroys manhood. It goes what St. Thomas Aquinas called the effeminate man, the man who's unwilling to suffer. And I think that's really the key issue today, is this point of fatherless homes. And General Boykin, could you speak on the idea of fatherlessness and suffering, and why it's a good thing? I mean, you in the military, I'm sure that y'all had a little bit of suffering every once in a while, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. My latest book is called Man to Man, and I write about fathers should let their sons endure hardship, or let them suffer the consequences of their behavior. You know, when my son was picked up in Washington, D.C., driving my car, which he was not supposed to be in Washington, I had a pistol in there. I always have a pistol in my car, but you can't take it into D.C. He got pulled over, and they arrested him. And they called me and said, we've got him, but we found a pistol in the car. And I said, and he was driving in Washington? They said, yeah. I said, well, he wasn't supposed to be there, so tell him to enjoy his stay in the jail.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really good, because, you know, I know my dad, he wants us to suffer, and we have this idea. I was talking to some friends of mine, some guys, and we're talking about how nowadays men are forced to go to the gym to pick up weights and that kind of thing, and that's the way a man can be manly, because we're no longer working in the fields, and the whole industrial culture has kind of feminized men, where we sit in front of a screen all day and we go home and then we play video games all day, and that goes straight to the point.
That absolutely does. And you know, the other thing, I take when my boys were growing up, and I have 3 sons and 2 daughters as well, but I have 3 sons, and I would take them up on the Appalachian Trail with a backpack on their back, and for days we'd walk that trail. What was my point? I was trying to toughen them. I was trying to let them endure hardship. I'd get them up and go take them out on very cold winter mornings and put them in a tree stand and let them sit up there and shiver. I'd take them out and put them in a duck blind with the wind blowing and the snow blowing. What was my whole point? I wanted them to endure hardship. I wanted them to know that they could get through it, and it paid off for them, because they're rugged men now. In fact, in 2 weeks, I'll be in the Kenai River in Alaska with them, just fishing for salmon, and we'll be standing out there in the rain, but they're still going to fish. And my whole point is, we've got to allow them to endure. And if you want to say suffer, that's okay. That's a good term. I want them to endure and suffer certain hardships as they're growing up, so that they know in their own mind that they can survive.
Amen.
We've got so many young people that have never endured that, never endured any kind of hardship, never been held accountable for the decisions that they made. Mom and dad have always jumped in there to bail them out. That's not true. I caught one of my sons smoking marijuana. And I said, I told you, if you did that, you couldn't live in my house. So I took him down to the mall and I put him out.
Praise be to God.
I said, I love you. And if you ever decide that this, my home or your home here is more important to you, and you love your family more than you do marijuana, you give us a call. And I put him out. Look, you say that, oh, that is so hard. Well, okay, maybe so. But it didn't take but a week for him to call and say, I'll do anything.
We're talking with retired General William Boykin, Jerry Boykin. He's the Executive Vice President of the Family Research Council. That's frc.org, by the way. Now, General, somebody who obviously led Delta Force, Green Berets, military intelligence and strategy, I wanted to go back to something we were talking about a minute ago and about pornography. Pornography as a weapon to destroy society. We've heard reports of various governments around the world using pornography in very strategic ways to take away capability of their enemies. I can definitely see how pornography is being used in our country and how it has really devastated literally millions of lives. As a military guy, how do you see it?
Yeah, if you look at the statistics now, 3 out of every 5 divorces in America, 3, pornography is listed as one of the issues that has caused this divorce. And it's not just men, it's women. And Josh McDowell has studied this. And Josh McDowell has a website that really talks about this, gives you the statistics and all. And it is such a pervasive and damaging thing. And by the way, and I say this, I've said this in a couple of videos that we've made for these men's conferences that we do, that what they've proven now is if you are a long-term pornography watcher, ultimately it is going to affect you in a way that you do not want it to. And that is that it's like a drug. It's like the endorphins that are released every time you watch pornography. And ultimately, you can't have a normal relationship, a normal, intimate relationship with your wife after long-term, prolonged watching of pornography.
I want to switch back to some of the national issues or international issues. I want to talk about the military. I served in the Marine Corps. My father retired from the Army. His dad was Army. Most of my cousins are Army. So a lot of military service in our family. And I remember when I went to boot camp, my drill instructor asked us, do we want the boot camp of our grandfathers in World War II, or do we want the new and improved? And we're all like, give us the hard one, So he handed us our tales for 3 solid months. It was pretty hardcore. And today we look at the headline news and we see transgendered ideology being taught and basically enforced in the military these days. And it makes you wonder, is our military really ready? Does it stand prepared to defend our country against our enemies? What say you as a retired general? How do you feel about the current state of military affairs?
I've never been so concerned about our military. I was very, very concerned under Barack Obama when he started using the military as a social experiment. And it was like the soldiers were guinea pigs. And now we're seeing it again. I thought Trump came in and really started to restore the readiness of our military. And look how long it took to take down ISIS. Really only a matter of weeks. And his attitude was, tell me what you need, what kind of rules of engagement, what kind of materiel do you need to destroy ISIS? They told him, he gave it to them. Rules of engagement being very important. And he said, now go back out there and kill them or put them on the run. And that's exactly what happened in a very short period of time. So I see it. I see we've circled back around now. We're going back through the social experiments, using the military as a test bed. And that's largely because you cannot change society unless you change the military. And you know yourself, the values that are inculcated into the Uniform Code of Military Justice are in many ways are the national values. They're the values that really have been with this country since the American Revolution, coming from our founding fathers and really coming from their faith in many ways. So I am worried about our military because I think this critical race theory is doing nothing but dividing the ranks. And you can give a soldier the finest weapons, the finest technology, and that gives him a real edge. And it's very helpful. But he cannot win on the battlefield, as you know, without cohesion, without brotherhood, without one man being willing to die for another one. And that what this critical race theory nonsense is it is dividing instead of uniting and building that cohesion. It's dividing these troops. It's going to be hard to win in the future because of that.
I remember General Washington, talk about founding fathers, complaining about the Continental Army and their lack of discipline, their lack of morals, and just struggling through the process of trying to defeat the English. And that wasn't dealing with critical race theory. That wasn't dealing with transgenderism or just simple wokeness or even cancel culture. And here we are today. There are men and women in uniform who have a Christian faith, and they are living in an experience where they're now pressed to even share that publicly, let anybody know about it. I have a friend of mine who's a pilot in the Navy, and he and I would talk often about some of the things going on. And lately, when I've asked him, he's like, I can't talk. Don't ask me. I can't say anything. Please don't ever bring it up again, because he knows his social feeds are being monitored. His own private correspondence seems to be monitored. At least that's what he's sort of intimating. Is that the case? Is it gotten down to that level in the military, General?
Yeah, I think it has, and I think it's particularly affecting chaplains who are giving biblical answers to questions that are being asked of them, and then they're being persecuted, and in some cases prosecuted for giving a biblical answer, for giving an answer that is consistent with their faith. And that is happening. But keep this in mind. Karl Marx, the grand poobah of this Marxist movement, when he wrote the Communist Manifesto in 1848, along with Friedrich Engels, he said, my objective is to dethrone God and to destroy capitalism. He also said religion is the opiate of the masses. He was a hardcore atheist. Now you think about it, you cannot be a Marxist nation unless you believe that your rights come from the government, from man. They cannot be inalienable rights. They can't be rights that come from God. Our founding fathers gave us two unique concepts. One was inalienable rights, and the other was consent of the governed. And Marxism sucks up both of those, destroys them, and then everything comes from the government. Everything is regulated from the government. All needs are supplied by the government. And by the way, that has never succeeded. Just take a look at the three communist nations in the world, or the three socialist nations in the world: Cuba, Venezuela, and North Korea. And they are all in a huge mess.
Do you see a scenario in which service members will come to a point of deep personal conflict between their service to our country and their faith? Could it get so bad that they might have to, quit the military or make, desperate choices? I mean, we swear an oath to defend and uphold the Constitution of the United States, but when we're asked to do things that are immoral, unethical, I could see where that could create a deep personal conflict for so many. What say you, General Boykin?
It's already happening. There are already people that are leaving the military because they feel like that what they're being forced to do, or what they're being exposed to, is counter to their faith, and they're leaving the military. And it's going to be hard to recruit people because people are seeing what's happening. Moms and dads all across the country do not want their children to go into a military that is being used as a test bed for social experiments. So retention is being impacted, and recruiting is going to be impacted here very quickly. I think that this is, I think we've still got some rough times ahead for our military. What it will take to get us out of this is a commander-in-chief that really cares about the military, that really understands the imperative for a strong military, like the previous president was. He was never in the military. Donald Trump was never in the military. Ronald Reagan was also strong in terms of supporting the military and rebuilding the military after the Jimmy Carter era had all but destroyed it. So the hope is that our next president will not be a president that looks at our military as a test bed, but that looks at our military as a front line of defense against those things that threaten this nation's survival. And if he sees it that way, he will then hopefully do the right things in terms of restoring readiness in our military. But I'm very concerned about this. This is bad. We need leaders at all levels that can be brought in, that are not there to support the agenda of the president, but that are there to support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
In that same vein, I have friends who are joining the military in various branches, and they're concerned that they're not going to be able to practice their faith in the military. How should a man join the military today? Is it going to destroy your faith? Is it going to be impossible for you to be for my example, Catholic in the military?
I think that's already happening. I think that you're being told now that your faith is a private thing, and that you should keep it to yourself. That's not what we're called to do. The Great Commission was going to all the world, making disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost. Well, I think that the general tone in the military today is that you're not supposed to talk about your faith. You're not supposed to share your faith. You're supposed to keep your faith to yourself. And you can go to church on Sunday as long as the chaplain in the chapel there on your installation is not saying anything against same-sex marriage or homosexuality or abortion. As long as he's not saying anything there, you can go and worship in that church. That's not what it is supposed to be in our military. Our military is a place that people should be free to express their ideas. We understand there are certain restrictions on our First Amendment rights in the military. You remember that. You couldn't go out and make public statements criticizing the commander-in-chief. But I think it's tough now for people to actually live their faith, and I think that's one of the reasons we're going to see some recruiting problems here soon.
General Jerry Boykin's our guest, Executive Vice President, Family Research Council, FRC.org. Now, General, as we said many times now, you have commanded the tip of the spear, Delta Force, Special Forces, Special Warfare Center and School, and Intelligence. So there's really very few people on planet Earth who has as good of a grasp on this as you do. But I'm thinking about the military and some of the things you've talked about retention, the morality issues, the ethics issues. You know, the Hessians, going back to early church fathers, or rather the founding fathers of America, fighting the Hessians. This were elite soldiers with no moral compass. You know, you pay me, I'll go fight. Well, in today's American military, some of the tip of the spear guys, so the guys that you helped to establish in our military, you know, they serve, they get out, and some of these guys are being hired by cartels in Mexico to train their guys, or all over the world. And I wonder, just using that as an example, about the more we remove that moral compass from our military, the more bad things were going to happen. And then layer on top of that, we are asking these men and women, but mostly men, to go on deployment after deployment after deployment after deployment. At what point do we break the human person in an effort to ensure our geopolitical politics?
Yeah, you make a good point. And I have said many times that when you remove the ethical and moral foundations of our military, what you have is a mercenary group. And the mercenaries are not the ones you want on the battlefield. You want people that are committed to the oath that they take. But when you remove morality and you suppress their faith and you do those things, you wind up with a group of mercenaries. And history shows us that they have done bad things. They have done very bad things on the battlefield. And, you know, go back and look at some of the situations where men have been without a moral foundation in what they've done in combat. It's not pretty.
Okay, so how do we turn it around? What do we do as Americans? We've talked about some of the big problems in our country, and our military is something I'm interested in, and you are as well. Is it possible? Are we past the breaking point? Can we turn our country around? Can we turn the ethics and the moral compass around in our government and our military? General Boykin, what say you?
Yeah, I think we can, but I don't think we should expect to do it overnight. It's about leadership. We got to find leaders that are committed. We got to find leaders that have courage. And by the way, if you go back and look at the Bible, the first ones that are thrown into the lake of fire are cowards. So we need to get rid of the cowards. We need to find bold, audacious leaders that are willing to step forward and say, "Here am I, send me," just as Isaiah did. So it's going to take leadership. The other thing is that Americans have to get involved. They have to get engaged in what's going on in this country. You can't sit on the sidelines. I mean, there's just no seats for spectators anymore. You need to get involved, you know, and I'm talking to everybody that's listening or watching today. You need to get involved. And the first thing you need to do is make sure you're registered to vote, and make sure everybody around you that you know, that you influence, that you're in contact with, make sure they're registered to vote, and make sure they go and vote, and make sure they know exactly what's at stake, and make sure they know what those candidates stand for. That's the reason you pass out voter guides. But our founding fathers gave us this unique thing about choosing our own leadership. And so many Americans don't exercise that. The other thing they can do is just what's happening now is they can become members of a school board. They can get involved with the school board. They can go to the school board meetings, and they can do just what they're doing in counties all over this country now. They're waking up and they're going to those school boards and they're saying, "You're not going to teach this to our children." And that's where my generation has slept through the last 40 years. We've let them take history out of our classrooms, and we've let them bring in and inculcate socialism and Marxism and a number of things that are this critical race theory included, that it just has done nothing but turn us in the wrong direction with a generation now that is not proud to be Americans. They're not proud to be Americans. And that's heartbreaking to me, because they see the flag as being a symbol of something evil. It just came out here just in the last couple of days that people are saying, no, that flag represents something evil. Brothers, I've draped men in those flags that we had to send home in a body bag, a coffin, draped in that flag. This is a time for Americans to wake up and rise up. I'm not talking about dragging out your AR-15s and breaching the Capitol or anything. I'm saying get involved in the nation, get involved in the process. You can make a difference.
Amen. Amen. Well, praise be to God, General Boykin. We're so grateful for your time. His brand new book is called Man to Man, Rediscovering Masculinity in a Challenging World. I encourage you to check that out. But if you really want to know more about his backstory, especially his time in the military, check out Never Surrender, also a very good book. But Executive Vice President, Family Research Council, FRC.org, General Jerry Boykin, thank you for your time today. God love you and God bless you, and have a great day.
God bless you too, guys. Thanks.
Thank you. Semper Fi.